Okay, good morning and welcome to today's public comment period for our regular board cycle of meetings. We have 5 speakers with us today. Each speaker will be permitted up to 3 minutes for comment with a verbal prompt provided to assist with the timekeeping. While we are open to topics included in our agenda for discussion, there are a few items that are not permitted as items for public expression. These include issues under negotiation as part of the university's collective bargaining process, the employment status of any specific individual, statements concerning the private activities, lifestyles, or beliefs of individuals employed by or associated with the university, grievances of individual students or employees, proposals or bids for contracts, or pending or threatened litigation involving the university. As I introduce each speaker, I would ask that you please come to the podium to make your remarks. Our first speaker, alumnus Jeff Goldsmith, has asked to speak about the academic and student trustee process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the past, I have addressed you folks as an alumni of the university. Today, I'm going to be addressing you as a student. When I was a student at Penn State, I was very involved with the affairs of the university. I was chairman of students for Pennsylvania Public Interest Research Group. I was student government senator. I was consumer affairs chairman for the Organization of Town Independent Students, and I was a member of the Interfraternity Council. I will tell you right now that as a student, I'm disappointed and I'm angry. Back then, we were pushing hard for a permanent student representative to the Board of Trustees. Former Governor Shapp, I believe, had begun the tradition of using one of his appointments to the board to appoint a student, and that student was then ratified by the Senate of Pennsylvania, which is clear and regular protocol for gubernatorial appointments. We're in a position now where this board has recognized that it makes sense to have a permanent student representative as well as a permanent faculty representative of the board. However, you're also reserving the right to ratify and approve of the choice that the students make. The student representative is here not to represent the board, but to represent the students. At yesterday's governance committee meeting, the student body, the student leadership, was praised for the rigorous process that they used to choose a very able individual to represent the student body. Back when I was a student, the student leadership had many differences of opinion with the university. In fact, prior to the year that I enrolled in Penn State, the students asked the board to push for the university president's resignation. What happens if we're in a situation, again, where the students and the trustees conflict and you don't like the student's representative? Show some trust, show some honor to the students for the hard work they've done. They've done well. Later at the board meeting, don't ratify their choice. Welcome their choice. Congratulate them. And let's end this business of the board having to ratify and approve of the student and the academic representatives. Trust the students. We're teaching them to be leaders. Let them lead. Thank you.
Next, alumnus Steve Masters is asked to address the board on governance.
Thank you for extending me the privilege to address the board. My understanding is that the Board of Trustees is anxious to move on from the Sandusky scandal. Joe Paterno's dying wish was for the truth to be known. Something in this story stinks to high heaven, and I believe Penn State will not be able to move on until the truth is known. The free report has been widely discredited as being incomplete and based on speculation. The board has been unwilling to reveal the source material that underlies the free report, even to the alumni board members, in support of their fiduciary responsibilities. I believe the excuse of protecting confidentiality is a smokescreen. I am wondering if the lack of action because the board has something to hide. Penn State will not be able to be made whole unless and until an objective review of the free report is done. I am very interested in knowing the real reasons that the board fired Joe Paterno and Graham Spanier. I am also interested in knowing why the board decided to hire Louis Freeh, what his marching orders were, and why the board felt there was no need to review his conclusions. There has been a lot of misinformation passed off as fact in this story. Based on this misinformation, false narratives have been created, and many people have reached incorrect conclusions. These opinions have become entrenched and are very difficult to change in spite of overwhelming evidence to the contrary.
1 minute left.
I urge anyone who is interested in the truth in this matter to carefully read both the Spanier complaint as well as the Sandusky petition for post-conviction relief. In my opinion, both of these documents contain an order of magnitude more detailed and complete picture of what happened than the Freeh report. I again ask the board to conduct an objective review of the Freeh report, to conduct an investigation into how this crisis was mismanaged and who the responsible parties were, and to take the necessary steps to reverse the damage inflicted on the parties that have been harmed as a result of the board's actions. Unfortunately, I don't believe the board has any interest in doing these things. The board is in danger of being on the wrong side of history. The truth will eventually be known, and when it is, I believe the board will be taken to task for their failure to protect the interests of this great institution. Thank you.
Our next speaker is alumnus Rob Tribeck, has asked to address the board on matters of governance.
Good morning. With any luck, this will be my last time addressing the board from the public's speaker session. But in the last 3 years, I've watched this university that I love get torn in half. I've watched people I respected and admired, who I trusted to run the university, cower in the corner while the university was brought to its knees. I've watched this board allow the name and legacy of Joe Paterno to be trampled based on a fabricated report and yellow journalism. I've watched while the leadership of the board made one bad decision after another subsequent to November 2011. I've watched while the leadership of the board allowed Louis Freeh to run roughshod over my university and to cast unfair, inaccurate, and damning allegations against everyone associated with Penn State. I've watched while this board allowed a flawed, incomplete, and since wholly discredited report to define our university. I've watched this board become embroiled in infighting, marginalization of the alumni, trustees, and others, refusal to acknowledge the errors that it has made, and watched it ignore the overwhelming will of our alumni. And all the while, this board has lost sight of why you sit here. We sit here to educate students at our university. Instead, we spend our time fighting about the operations of the university. We need to get back to the core purpose for which we exist. We need to get back to being an elite university without being elitist, and we need to get back to the Penn State we all know and love. And that starts today. This afternoon, this board will self-appoint several new trustees. I implore you to move away from the backroom clandestine processes of the past. Do not appoint trustees because of patronage, or because of friendships, or because they're a yes person. Do not appoint trustees who appear only for cocktail parties and football games. Do not appoint trustees who have been rejected by the alumni, and do not appoint trustees whose sole purpose is the continued marginalization of the alumni trustees. Do not appoint trustees who are afraid to stand up for what is right, because if you do, it will only deepen the divide that exists. We are at a crossroads, and this university needs to fully emerge from our darkest hour, and we need to heal. It cannot do this unless this board formally and loudly rejects the free report for the fraud that it is, and it cannot do this unless this board works together, collectively, and every member has a voice. To move forward, we must first acknowledge, accept, and remedy the failures of the past, and if we can't do that, then every single person in this room should resign today. Do not allow egos and anger to cloud good judgment. Remember your mission and the very purpose of this board. Remember that a house divided against itself cannot stand. Remember who we are, and remember the words success with honor, and live them.
New UPUA Speaker of the Assembly, Emily Miller, would like to talk about the relationship between the board and the UPUA. Emily.
Hello, everybody. My name is Emily Miller, and I am the new Speaker of the Assembly for the University Park Undergraduate Association, and I also had the pleasure of meeting some of you yesterday evening. This is something new that we want to do within the UPUA, to come and speak to the board during public comment, allow you to hear some of the updates that we have and some of the things going on. I know a lot of times Emily can provide some of that, but usually it's just in her one committee meeting, so this is kind of to open it up and just have a better relationship and a better future with the board. So currently we have new leadership and we're in transition mode right now. We had elections the first week of April. The Academic Affairs Committee of the UPUA has created an open educational resources report that was submitted to the task force that was appointed by Provost Jones. So I actually sit on that task force, and now we're taking the report and other resources and working to find different pilot programs for the fall of 2015. The leadership will be attending the Association of Big Ten Schools conference in Maryland this summer to collaborate with other Big Ten schools, not only on what we're working on, but as initiatives as a whole for the Big Ten. We recently had a student death memorial, the first one that was run by students outside of Old Main. It was to honor the lives of those that we lost this past year. It was extremely successful and a very moving event, something that we hope to continue in the future. We'll also be working on a student platform with different universities within Pennsylvania and within the GPSA, the CCSG, and the UPUA to bring a unified approach to Harrisburg, advocating on behalf of all of the student governments. And then finally, something very exciting, for the first time in a very long time, the UPUA, a resolution that we passed was brought to the Senate floor and voted on, which was to allow postgraduate interviews as excused absences. So again, this is something that, very brief and something that we just want to extend our relationship with you and make sure you know what we're working on. So thank you.
Our last speaker is Vice President of the University Park Undergraduate Association, Terry Ford, who has asked to speak about the UPUA's goals and objectives.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. My name is Terry Ford. I am the new UPUA Vice President. I'm very happy to be here with all of you this morning to talk about the UPUA relationship with the board and how we can work together to expand that. I think that there's a number of really important objectives that our organization has that not only would be benefited by a close relationship with the board, but is definitely requiring that. So I think the better collaboration that we can achieve together is something that I'll be certainly interested in going forward. And on behalf of President McDonald and myself, I just want to make very clear that we love to collaborate with any and all trustees who have a sincere interest in student engagement and improving student life here at Penn State. And I do apologize for my brevity, but I would just like to extend that to all of you and wish you all a good meeting today. Thank you.
On behalf of the board, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be with us here today. That concludes the public comment session.